100 episodes is what we are celebrating today on the Roundhouse. All aboard!
In days past, the Roundhouse was where the railroad worker united with the steam locomotive, each to prepare for the journey ahead. Today, it's where we examine the history, the industry, the machines, the hobby, and the passion behind railroading. News, interviews, stories, and more. So climb aboard. This is The Roundhouse.
Welcome to the Roundhouse. I'm your host, Nick Kozarek, and this is episode 100. We've made it 5.5, almost 6 years after we began this journey together. We have made it, and I appreciate you coming along for the ride. We've talked to some amazing people so far on this journey. We're going to talk to some amazing people today, and we're going to continue talking to some amazing people. I'm your host, Nick Kozarek. Today we are talking with three panelists that we've heard on the Roundhouse before. From the Strasburg Railroad, Andrea Biesecker. From Norfolk Southern, Mike Huhn. And from the East Broadtop Foundation, Bennett Levin. Three people, as voted by you, who've been on the show before and talked about their expertise and their experience with railroading. And you wanted to hear them again. And frankly, I wanted to talk to them again. And so we have all of them here for a panel discussion, answering questions that, again, you guys submitted. I say the Roundhouse is our house because that's what I want it to be. Our place for being able to hear these stories, to learn, to grow, and have some amazing experiences. Thank you so much for joining along this ride. I also want to thank today's sponsor, Age of Steam Roundhouse. They are still offering tours in October of 2020 of their Sugar Creek, Ohio facility. Visit ageofsteamroundhouse.org. Our guests today for our first group panel here on the Roundhouse podcast include Amtrak Engineer Mike Huhn.
Hey, everybody.
Director of Business Development at the Strasburg Railroad, Andrea Biesecker.
Hi, everyone.
And President of Juniata Terminal and East Broadtop Foundation board member, Bennett Levin.
Hello, everybody.
It's so great to have all of you back on the show, and it's awesome to have this group conversation and to cover some topics from a range of perspectives. First, though, I feel like we should kind of check in with each of you. So first, Mike, when we had you on back in 2015, you were a Norfolk Southern engineer, and now you're an Amtrak engineer. What led to that career shift, and what have you been up to these 5 years?
First off, 5 years, just like that. Yeah, I think when we spoke, I think I was still a conductor. I think I would bet it was about a year. Oh, that was like back in June or July or so, Nick, somewhere in that neck of the woods. And yeah, I was still a conductor at that time. I actually got my promotion to engine service. I get sent to engine school with NS back in October 2016. I got my license in the spring of 2017 and ran out of Harrisburg, everywhere except toward the west toward Altoona and Conway. And just ran for a little while, but after a while, just got a different itch in my my career and running all as an engineer, going like I said, I pretty much everywhere except west out of Harrisburg. We was qualified to Baltimore and Wilmington, Delaware, in which that entailed me qualifying over a portion of the Northeast Corridor. We would come off the Port Road branch at Perryville, Maryland, and run either south to Baltimore or north to Wilmington. And just cruising along with freight trains, and I get the fast passenger trains coming by me every which way, and it's like, man, that would be cool to do someday. And about a little while after that, I began to seriously reconsider my career path, um, and Amtrak looked like a pretty suitable place to be. So I was applying and applying and applying, just because I was looking for a new direction to head in my career. And end of February of 2019, I got a call from Amtrak saying, "Hey, would you like to come work for us?" And I took the job. And nowadays, today I just passed my New York terminal physical characteristics test. So all I need to do is one more test, which is the 30th Street Station test in Philadelphia, and then I'll be fully qualified from Washington, New York to New York. So it's been fun. It was definitely an adjustment. The lifestyle from freight to passenger was a little bit different, but it was for the better. And it's, instead of going to hotels for 16 to 30 hours, anywhere in that particular range, I'm home in my own bed every night. So that's definitely a plus with passenger service. So things are pretty good so far, aside from the obvious COVID-19 pandemic things. So, but generally things are good.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that that's been a positive development. Congratulations, or near congratulations. Hopefully by the time this airs, you will have passed that test and then you will be set to go. But that is fantastic to hear that you enjoy pulling cargo that talks back to you. And speaking of someone who works with cargo who talks back to them, Andrea, you are now the Director of Business Development at Strasbourg.
Yep.
What does that mean you get to do now?
So I've kind of expanded from just my contract administration role with helping Kelly Anderson with our contract business at Strasbourg. I've expanded into the freight side of things a little bit. So now working with Steve Weaver and Mike Kronk to expand our freight business, get more new customers in there, more new commodities, and just up our freight car, how many freight cars we get in per month. So it's just like a constant expansion of our overall business model. So business development, I'm working on every aspect of our railroad right now.
It's really been amazing to see how the freight business has transformed. Steve was talking at the HRA convention a couple years ago, and we have that presentation recorded on the podcast about the development of it. And it's amazing to think that you went from 1 or 2 carloads a year a decade or so ago.
Yep.
And now it's multiple cars a day. It's fantastic to hear that you've been able to develop that.
Yes, and constantly growing. So we're working to keep building. Hopefully we're going to get bigger and bigger every year. That's my job. So I'm pushing for it.
Well, and speaking of developments in Pennsylvania, Bennett, there's now this thing. When I last talked to you, we were talking about your precious E8 locomotives. And now there's this thing called the East Broadtop Foundation. How did that come about from your perspective?
Well, it was a long time coming. There were some people 5-6 years ago who had curiosity, and you had a person in Joe Kowalczyk, whose dad had saved it and Joe had kept it alive, but realized that there was a generational change coming, and that what was so precious to his father needed to have new custodians. And what was a curiosity became a more immediate need. And this came about rather quickly over a course of maybe 3 or 4 months. And Henry Posner and Wick Moorman and myself and Brad Esposito and Rod Case. They got together, and as soon as Wick saw the property, he became entranced with it, and we just put our heads together to figure it out. And how do we make a deal that satisfies Joe's needs? And over a course of 3 or 4 months, we were able to hammer out an arrangement, and we formed this not-for-profit foundation because the East Broad Top is really much more than a railroad. And if you look at a vision to the future, the shop complex in Rock Hill Furnace could potentially be a much greater tourist draw than just the railroad. And we see this as almost being a Williamsburg type experience for people who want to see what industrial America was at the turn of the century. So between the locomotives, the car, the narrow gauge railroad, but the shop complex, there's an entire critical mass. And we've been very, very fortunate that the government leaders at every level, at the state, the federal, and the county and the local people have all pitched in, and we have this wonderful dynamic that's working. And and we're moving ahead, fixing the railroads, restoring 2 of the locomotives, bringing the shop buildings back to a stable condition. We've stabilized some of the buildings. We're putting a fire suppression system in throughout the entire complex. We just got a grant of $100,000 from the State Historic and Museum Commission to help us with the fire protection system. But we have an entire agenda to get this thing back to where it was in the 1920s, and hopefully for a much greater distance than just going 4 miles north to Colgate Grove. This week, we are submitting a application for a federal grant that, if we're successful, will open the railroad for 20 miles in the southern direction to a little abandoned mining town called Joliet, which is basically on top of a mountain, and there's a little horseshoe curve as you go up there, and there's a big flat plateau, and that would give us a real destination. But the other thing that makes it work, and we think, besides the shops being a very important draw, is the fact that the railroad itself is in the center of a series of railroad attractions. You have Strasburg, you have Steamtown, you have the B&O, you have the Western Maryland, you have all the Horseshoe Curve and Altoona, and the East Broad Top's in like the hub of the wheel. And we think that this critical mass could greatly enhance everybody's business prospects and really have a significant international tourist destination in this part of the country that's railroad and industry related. So there's a lot of things that attracted all of us to do this. Of course, the challenge is always there, and we've set aside and we're doing it. So, the proof of the pie is in the eating, and we'll see how it comes and how much money we can pry out of the government and how much we can raise privately, but we're well on our way.
You are indeed. I suppose that's a good thing to start with. So, Mike and Andrea, and I'll start with you, Mike. What are you feeling with regards to all of this excitement regarding the East Broad Top?
Well, it actually, for me, it kind of stemmed last year when I went to, it started last year when I went with a friend to one of the Roundhouse tours and one of the shop tours. And just that was the first, actually, the first time I really got to see much of the shop complex at Rock Hill Furnace. And I was absolutely blown away that everything was this time capsule of an area that was it. I don't really have much else to describe it, to be honest, because it really, you can't use any words you use, it still wouldn't be able to describe how important that historic site really is. So um, when I first learned of the purchase by the EBT Foundation, I was just absolutely excited, and I'm like, man, I can't. This is a real shot for this thing to come back and be better than ever. And it drove me to join the Friends of the East Broad Top. So that was probably one of the first things I did, is in support of the railroad, was join the Friends. And hopefully I get to be a little more involved in the years to come. But it's great to be a member of the Friends, and hopefully I can contribute in much bigger ways toward the revitalization of the railroad. And just seeing the amount of progress that has, it's September, and the fact that the railroad agreement was finalized in February, and it's September, and you've seen all the progress that has happened in such a short amount of time. That is a big testament to the foundation. So Bennett, I give you and the rest of the board, and Brad and Lawrence, a lot of credit for putting an incredible plan in motion, and also I want to give a lot of credit to the Friends for stepping up and assisting the foundation with bringing this invaluable piece of American history back to life. It's truly incredible to see all this happening in such a short time, and who knows what the railroad will look like in a year or 5 years or something like it. It's going to be amazing just to keep following along. So I'm very excited.
And Sparky?
Oh, I am totally piggybacking on Mike with how excited I am for just the history of Pennsylvania. Like the fact that this is happening right now, and we're actually, we're seeing progress. Instead of going in the wrong direction, we're finally going in the right direction. And I can't wait to follow along. And I want to get in there and help somehow. So I've got big dreams and hopes of like getting in there and maybe even joining the Friends like Mike. And, I just want to lend a hand wherever I can, whether it be through helping out at Strasburg with whatever Strasburg's involvement is and helping with projects, or just going in there volunteering on my own. No, this is monumental. We're making history all over again. We are rehistorying the history right now. By getting EBT back. So I am beyond excited for this.
It's great that we're all, friends or allies of the East Broad Top. Friends or soon to be friends. Our first question comes from Brian J. Smith, who asks, railroading seems a bit bland today with nothing but GEVOs hauling stack trains. What keeps your passion alive for the industry and its past? We'll start with Mike.
Oh, Brian had a really good dinger right there. I'll tell you that. I think just the way it seems like for me, it's more than just a job. It's more than just a paycheck. It's a way of life and something I've wanted to do since I was a little kid. And I never let that fire for my career die down. And that's what, and what I go through on a day-to-day basis with Amtrak, just the day-to-day operations of the Northeast Corridor it's pretty incredible to see. And obviously I'm referring back to pre-COVID times where there was trains on the hour, sometimes running every 30 to 45 minutes. And what fascinated me was just the terminal operations in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York, just to see all these trains moving in such little time and sometimes even such little space. And you're also not just running trains, you're helping a businessman get to his day job, and he needs to be at work at 9 o'clock in the morning. You're helping a family go on vacation, or stuff like that. It's you're not you play a part of people's lives, and sometimes most of my coworkers don't even realize it. It's just sometimes it's like, oh, I'm going to work today. No, you're like I said, helping people go to work, go on vacation, visiting family, visiting friends, traveling, going to see new places. It's for me personally, it's kind of almost an honor and a privilege to be part of people's lives that way, and just having an impact on their lives, and sometimes not even knowing it. So that's what does it for me. And it goes beyond just looking at different engines and cars and all that. It's a lot bigger than that.
Sparky?
Well, once again, like I'm following up Mike here, so it's a hard act to follow. But once again, kind of piggybacking, railroading is so much bigger than the individual. Like this is a group effort, lifestyle, community that we get to be a part of. So we're touching lives. Like my side of railroading is a little different than Mike's. So we're a tourist railroad. But the way I always look at it is we are creating those lifelong memories that you can't create any other way. So, you know, grandma and grandpa take the kids, they go to Strasburg, they ride the train, they hear the whistle, the ghost whistle, all that fun stuff. Like that is going to become a lifelong memory for somebody that's going to just touch them in a way that nothing else could. And you can't replace that in any other way. Like this is the one and only chance that I may ever have in my life to reach all these people and affect them in a positive way. And I geek out on sharing my excitement for what I do with everyone else. And I want to keep my steam railroads alive forever and ever and ever. And I want to share it with everyone else so that they can appreciate it like I do. And I guess, as long as I keep the train running, as long as we're giving rides, I'm doing the best I can. So it's a lifestyle, as Mike said. It's one big family. We're all in this together, guys. So.
And if I may add in there, as one of my earliest steam memories, I think as far as I'm aware, my first time I've ever seen a steam engine, 1994 engine 90 at Strasbourg. So yes. I can fully attest to that for sure. The tourist railroads, especially for my generation growing up, Strasbourg was the place that we go to all the time. So that's spot on, Andrew, spot on.
Thanks, Mike. And I'm glad that we're all speaking the same language because, like I said, we're all one family, even if we haven't met each other yet. That's the other thing. It's like you have so much in common with all your fellow railroaders and you don't even realize it until you get like 5 minutes to sit down and talk and be like, oh my goodness, we are all connected at the core.
What do you think, Bennett?
Well, 60 years ago, I was a senior in college, and I was at summer school at Penn State, and I went down to the opening of the East Broadtop. So now, I'm older, neither Mike or Sparky, and I grew up with steam as a child. My grandmother's house backed up the Pennsylvania Railroad in Artemis Cove in Jersey City, and I would go to the third floor bedroom and just spend hours looking at the trains. Important about all of this in preservation is that today young kids are so absorbed by their electronic devices. And when you see a child see a steam locomotive, or when a kid can go and see industry, something real and tangible, it's a whole new experience. And it's critical that we preserve this kind of history, because if it's gone, it can't be recreated. And it's the excitement and the educational experience. And so many kids today are working on the railroad because of one person. And who was that one person? Ross Rowland. Because when Ross Rowland did the Freedom Train, they went down there, and the moms and dads and grandparents took them down to see the steam engine. And you have so many career railroaders today that are there because they saw something living and breathing when they were a child. And that's why this whole preservation is important. It's just not to go and take a picture of an old boxcar, but it's to take a child and encourage a child's mind to imagine something. And then they have a whole different outlook. And you got to pry these kids away from these electronic devices because they're becoming zombies. And the Strasburg and all these tourist railroads are giving kids a different experience. And that'll sustain the industry.
Age of Steam Roundhouse, a true treasure of railroad preservation, is back for its second public season. This is a brand new roundhouse with nearly 24 steam locomotives on display in Sugar Creek, Ohio. The facility features an 18-stall, accurately reconstructed brick roundhouse surrounding a 115-foot turntable, the largest private collection of steam locomotives in the world, and a fully functioning, working back shop where skilled staff actively restore and repair steam locomotives. The railroad is open for tours this summer and fall and is taking all necessary precautions to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Tours of the roundhouse and shop area will be offered Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, July through October. Tickets must be purchased in advance on their website at ageofsteamroundhouse.org. If you haven't seen it yet, visit ageofsteamroundhouse.org and follow them on social media. When it comes to the issue of making sure that people get exposure, I think we can all agree that mainline excursions do so much because they take passenger trains oftentimes to towns that wouldn't ordinarily see a passenger train. Derek Thomas asks, is the excursion/tourism industry as a whole any closer to finding a solution to the problems that have arisen in recent years in regards to securing insurance through partners other than Amtrak? I'll open this for whoever wants to go first.
Well, the legislation has given, after the accident at Frankfurt Junction, has widened the federal liability cap. But in the last year or so, the major railroad insurer, which is Zurich, has left the business because they've sustained substantial losses. That coupled with, try to be polite, but the Amtrak's misguided policy with excursions, off the route excursions, has made it very, very difficult. And in 2018, when Amtrak canceled the Toys for Tots train in New York, a couple of us stepped in and we got Norfolk Southern to cooperate, and we ran it one last time. Because there's a realization that these excursions do several things. They create a positive image for the industry to counter the whistle in the night or the horn in the night that wakes you up, or the delay at the grade crossing. But when you do something and the community benefits from it, then there's a much better perception of the railroad industry. Number two, Amtrak's funded to a great extent by the federal treasury. So a town like Binghamton that doesn't have normal Amtrak service should have the benefit of using Amtrak's ability to run these excursions because they're contributing to Mike's Northeast Corridor. So why not, as long as you're not losing money running the train, why not do it? And we're going to have to get back to a point in time when Congress is going to have to say, You're going to have to do this because we're paying you to do it. And once that happens, the issue of insurance goes away because then you're covered basically under Amtrak's insurance, and you pay Amtrak for the small bit of it that you use, and you still have the benefit of the federal liability cap. So it's going to require a change in management, and hopefully that'll come around sooner rather than later. And I'm confident that excursions will be back, maybe not with some of the insanity that has surrounded some of them, but as a general good public relations tool. And if you look in the state of Pennsylvania, Amtrak's policies with regard to excursions have really hurt the preservation movement, because the Harrisburg NLRHS chapter basically funded the restoration of State Tower in Harrisburg and created an endowment to maintain it based upon the 3 or 4 trips they ran to Renovo and up and down the Port Road. So they've lost that income stream. The same with the museum in Altoona. They've lost the income stream of $50 or $60 or $70,000 a year that they got from the Horseshoe Curve trips once a year. So there's going to have to be a political realization that taxpayers are funding Amtrak, and they have the right to expect Amtrak to cooperate in a broader sense and not be as arrogant and as ignorant as they have been in recent years concerning what they have to do to properly serve the public.
It seems like until that resolution happens, things like what you guys did at the Strasbourg Railroad, Sparky, with having 611 visit, so it had to be ferried over Norfolk Southern and Amtrak lines, but then it was able to arrive at your place and provide a pretty incredible event. It seems like that might be a solution for some, would you say?
For some, yeah. I mean, we definitely like to see it be an excursion, like a legitimate excursion, maybe with a destination of Strasbourg, not just a ferry move. But it's really beyond my control at Strasbourg Railroad, because there's so many other interested parties involved in doing that. And as Bennett was getting at a little bit with just all of the involvement of the insurances and how nobody's willing to step up to the plate and offer that on an affordable basis, I should say, for any of these organizations that are trying to set up these excursions. It's really a bummer, and it's kind of depressing. We consider ourselves fortunate that we were able to have the 611 visit Strasbourg, and we really would like to have that opportunity again, but it's an uphill battle, really, just to be able to get that accomplished, unfortunately. And I personally don't have any brilliant ideas as to how we can fix that problem. But it's a worthwhile cause, and I would love to move towards that if at all possible. So
you got to write your congressman. That's what you have to do.
Strongly worded letter to my congressman to say we want Steam Mainline excursions as soon as possible.
Please, thank you.
Big bold letters.
Yes.
Right.
I use all caps.
Yes.
Andrew Dietrich asks, what skills are needed to be a certified locomotive fireman, whether it be for a short line like Strasbourg or a mainline superstar? I'll toss this one open to whoever wants to grab it. Mike, I know that you volunteer with Fort Wayne Railroad Historical Society. Maybe you could speak to this one a bit initially.
To be perfectly honest, I'm not aware of any particular certifications to be a fireman on the 765. I know there's a lot of starting from the ground up as where you start out, like shoveling the coal at night keeping the engine hot overnight and keeping the pressure up, as I did over the years with 765 when we had the 21st Century Steam program. There were many nights that I spent just maintaining the pressure with another volunteer on the crew to keep the engine hot and ready to go for the next morning when the road crew would come on duty and they'd run a trip such as to the ones we did to Altoona and Gallitzin in 2013, and our probably the biggest year we had in the program, which was 2015. We were in Youngstown, we were in Buffalo, I think it was Buffalo, and we were in Allentown and Scranton and Steamtown. We were almost everywhere with the engine. So I think Kelly Lynch once told this to me when I first joined Fort Wayne, was just show up, come to the shop during the weekend. There's plenty of projects to happen, and then just put your time in and get to know a lot of the volunteers there or wherever it is, whatever organization that you want to become part of, and just get to know people. Networking is a beautiful thing, and just kind of be willing to learn, even if it's sweeping the shop floor or picking up tools from here or there, and eventually you'll work your way up the ladder. And it takes a lot of time. It's a lot of investing of time to get up to that point, but it's worth it very, very much. It's the effort that you put in, and not only that, but you're learning a trade from 70, 80 years ago, which is slowly dying, but there's still a select group of people, and Andrea can attest to Strasburg's ability to keep the torch lit for that. It's really cool to see that the skill set that was once commonplace 60, 70 years ago, that is, even though it's not very widely seen anymore, it's still very much alive. You just got to find the right place to look for it.
We're never going to let it die. Never, ever, ever. Anyway, as long as I'm around.
What does it look like at Strasbourg as far as the quote-unquote certification, if there is one?
Certification. So it's not so much of a certification in my mind as it is a earning of your stripes. So there's no set skill set. Kind of like Mike was saying, it is put in the time, put in the effort, have that genuine drive and desire. And yeah, you might be sweeping the shop floor, or yeah, you're going to be in the smoke box shoveling out wheelbarrow loads of soot. And you know what? That's what it takes to keep this stuff going. And that sort of effort and that sort of input and help for an organization is going to go noticed, as opposed to people that kind of feel entitled, like, oh, I have a degree in whatever you want to have a degree in, right? And they think that they know everything about steam locomotives. It's like, no, this is a on-the-job training. It's a skill that is learned over time and just experience more than, you're not going to hit the ground running in most cases. I mean, you might have an internal knack that, is just not deniable, but at the same time, you need to get in there. You need to get dirty. Dirt is a prerequisite, I should say. You need to get dirty and give it your all, and you need to get in there and work with the rest of the team. Put in the time, put in the effort, and blood, sweat, and tears is all part of anything worthwhile as far as I'm concerned. So your steam locomotive and your fireman's license are no different.
Good to know that it's so much of this in general, so much of preservation is driven by motivation. And it's fitting then that those who are putting in the effort are rewarded with the more glamorous and more glamorous and more glamorous opportunities.
It's all glamorous. Just think of it that way.
Oh,
yeah, but it's like anything else in life. It's passion, and the people that do it have a passion for it, and they're willing to do the dirty jobs to get it done. And if you're not passionate about it, you're going to be a couch potato.
Yeah,
True.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
that's about right.
Here's an interesting one that was raised. Wayne Wanzer asks, what is the panel's reaction with the recent appointment of Katie Farmer as the Executive Vice President of Operations with BNSF and the impact an appointment like hers could have for women in a male-dominated industry? I leave this open for whoever wants to grab it first.
Look, I think you have a person like Cindy Sanborn, who earned her stripes years ago. It is now, she went from the Union Pacific, and I think she's now Norfolk Southern. I mean, you look in even in directors' offices, there are now women, and women are, throughout the industry. I remember years ago, and I'm talking about maybe 40 years ago, and I was in either Cheyenne or Laramie, and there was the first woman engineer on the Union Pacific, and I was standing trackside, and she said, "Would you take my picture?" I took her picture, and I sent it to her. And look how far we've come since then. So I think it's like everything else. Times have changed, and opportunities exist. And again, if you have the passion to succeed, it's not going to be dependent upon your sex or your gender or anything that would identify you other than your willingness to do a good job and be passionate about it. And if you have that passion, you will succeed.
Amen.
I'll give a second amen to that.
Man, make me the third. Can't really say much more else.
Well, yeah, you summed it up pretty well. I mean, you have to want it. There's got to be the want it there, no matter who it is.
You have to have the fire in the belly.
Yeah, how else are you gonna make steam? Come on.
Oh, that is perfect. We are t-shirting that slogan right there.
Trademark it.
Yeah, that. We're
I got
getting
fire
it.
in my belly. Go ahead.
Belly needs the fire.
And then on the back of the shirt, you put a picture of a Rolaids or a Tums bottle.
Oh.
Fire in the belly with all the 3 steam engines of Strasbourg, Andrea. That's a t-shirt. Right there.
Mike, it seems to me that I speaking anecdotally, I feel like I have a lot of Facebook friends who are Amtrak employees, and I feel like they do come from a lot of different backgrounds, different race, different gender. Is that something that you would agree that you have a good, diverse workforce from your perspective at Amtrak?
Absolutely. There's, we have people from all walks of life, all backgrounds and such, and it's not just my fellow coworkers and T&E or train and engine service. It's the onboard services people, station services people, everybody. They work tirelessly day in and day out just to make sure the customer experience is as best as it possibly can be. And I know there's one particular story of a friend of mine who's he works out of New York, and he told the story of I'm not exactly sure. I think it was a young woman who had a service dog, and he found her crying on the platform, and he discovered that she missed her train, and he did everything in his power to make sure that she was taken care of, and she eventually caught a later train. So there's a certain amount of dedication to the coworkers that I have that and it may be because we're in the public eye that we just want to be good servants and good stewards to not only the company but just our fellow passengers and fellow people. I guess that's the way to put it. But it just goes along with Amtrak being a service and not just moving trains from A to B. It's just making sure the people get to where they need to be safely, on time, and to make sure they have a good experience. And the stories like that I hear is just it just kind of restores a little faith in humanity, and that's what's really that's what I find very admirable with the people that I work with.
At Strasburg, Sparky, is Shelley a fully qualified fireman now? I know that she was working on it.
I believe that she is fully qualified as fireman. I'm not sure if she's planning on, working towards engineer or not. But as far as I know, fireman is in the bag, or fire lady, as I always like to call it.
Fire lady, yes.
Yeah. I'm not just the only one, so it's refreshing.
And you were talking before we hit the record button on this about how now you are teaching welding, and that must open up when we talk about putting the fire in the belly. It's about part of that equation is making sure that we in preservation are finding opportunities to educate the younger generation so that if they have that interest, we can catalyze on it and get it into motion and get them into our field. So what is it that you're involved with specifically?
All right. So recently, and I mean super recently, like within the last month or so, I've had an opportunity to become a welding instructor at Thaddeus Stevens College of Technology in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So we're just down the road from Strasbourg. So while it's not railroad related per se, I'm definitely putting the steam boiler spin on all of my lessons that I'm doing, and trying to instill a whole lot of boiler maker-esque methods into my lesson plans, because there's so much of a lost art within working with this older equipment that our throwaway society today does not understand or appreciate. So whereas I would say standard welding program, one without the sparky influence anyway, is probably geared more towards new construction, right? So we have this throwaway society. We want to just make everything new, and when it wears out, we're going to get a new one. I'm really working a lot of repair into my curriculum, whereas you wouldn't get that in most welding programs. So, rusty metal, maybe scaly metal. I've already hit up some guys at the railroad to maybe come by and do a riveting demonstration just to see how we used to attach metal to itself without welding. But yeah, I'm trying to do my best to take people who wouldn't necessarily have any exposure to our side of the world, like our realm as railroaders, and maybe put that bug in their ear and light that flame that they don't even know they have, to push them more towards the preservation side and the restoration and repair side of things, subliminally maybe, like just kind of sneak it in there wherever I can, because I definitely have a passion for keeping this stuff going. And if I have one or two students that decide that, hey, I want to be a boiler maker, and I want to go to EBT and fix steam boilers, then my job is done. You know what I mean? So like, that's kind of what I'm pushing for. We'll see if I'm successful, because as Bennett was saying a little bit, it's kind of hard to pry these young folks away from their video games and their cell phones and make them crawl on a boiler. But I'm doing my best.
I think we all are in that regard. So obviously 2020 has put a damper on many of our travel plans, and we haven't been able to get out as much as we want. So for 2021, light, easy question. Where do you want to go and travel to by rail or tourist rail museum? Other than East Broad Top, because we all want to do that. I think we've cleared that one out. So other than the East Broad Top, where do we want to go and why? We'll start with you, Bennett.
Where do I want to go? I mean, I would like to get the E units out on the railroad again, but it's I'm not confident that'll happen in the foreseeable future. One of the places I would like to go is I'd like to go back to Montana. I think Big Sky Country and railroading in Big Sky Country is just a nice experience. And I can recall going down on a rafting trip down, I think, the Flathead River, and you had out at near Glacier, and you had the BNSF, high above you on the side of a cliff, and it's pretty good. So, maybe it's the Isaac Walton again, and then a rafting trip down the river along the railroad.
Sparky?
I've never been there, which I know I should probably be stoned because I haven't been there, but I want to go to Colorado Railroad Museum and I want to see 20 run because that's been a long time coming, and I personally have countless hours invested in that particular locomotive. And aside from a few short test runs at Strasburg, I want to see her in all her glory that's not on YouTube. So if I could pick one place that I got to hit in 2021, I want to go see RGS 20 at Colorado Railroad Museum.
And Mike?
Well, like Andrea, I have yet to go to Colorado, so the CRM is definitely on the list, but I probably will get crucified at the stake for this. I've yet to go to the Durango and Silverton, as well as the Cumbres and Toltec, and that has been on my list for a very long time. I hear so many good things about both places. I've had a little affinity for Rio Grande narrow gauge steam for quite a bit. So that is definitely on the list. I don't know if it'll be in 2021, but at some point in my life, it's on the bucket list. So both of those railroads are definitely, I would ideally like to go to next year.
Well, I would agree with that. So we're all East Coast folks say we want to go to the West Coast. I have a feeling too that our mutual friend Lynn Modinger, if he were here, he'd be saying he'd want to go to the West Coast and do Colorado navigation too. So
I mean, he's big into his Colorado theme, but this EBT stuff has got a little bit of a heartstring for him too.
Yeah, the retirement that looks a lot like work.
He's busier now than he was when he was working. I can tell you that for a fact. Every time I got to get a hold of him, he's always somewhere in Pennsylvania working, and I got the air quotes going there. For a retired guy, he's awful busy.
It beats playing golf, okay?
Yes.
Yeah. It's much healthier for you than playing golf.
I would agree. I feel like it's funny because I feel golf is popular here in Northwestern PA, and so many people do it, and I don't, and I feel completely left out because I don't. I'm a little bit of an island away from fun rail preservation stuff, like you guys have. So, needless to say, when I get out to those circles, it's like, oh yeah, everybody else is doing rail preservation, just not here.
You should make rail preservation an extreme sport. How are we going to do that? We could have our own X Games.
The rivet counting, challenge.
Maybe riveting.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. Not the counting.
It's a riveting idea.
Oh.
I went there. I'm sorry.
You did it. Well, it's okay.
Somebody had to.
It's true, though. Honestly, I feel like, and kind of a spin-off of that. I mean, you see all these reality shows about ice road trucking and,
right?
duck call making and whatnot. Like, when are we going? The closest we've had yet, as far as I'm aware, is have steam engine will travel with the Graham lanes with their tank engines. But like one that actually stays at a specific place and like follows that crew around and you get to know the personality. I would watch that show. I don't know about you guys listening out there, but I'm sure you could attest, Marky, that there'd be good, like the Strasburg shops would make for a good show.
Oh, it would be so fun.
The dramatics alone.
What are you saying?
The best show in railroad preservation was a show about the hobo convention in Ames, Iowa, because those people were well preserved.
Well preserved, as in like.
As in, I'm not familiar with the show. So,
there was a show, I think, on National Geographic about the Hobo Festival.
Oh, Festival, right?
That's held every year in Ames, Iowa. It was absolutely a fascinating show.
Interesting.
And to go back to my dramatics comment, I'll elaborate a little bit on that. So, like, you see a lot of these, and I think Deadliest Catch is one of them. Ice Road Truckers, and Railroad Alaska was another one. They do a lot of dramatics. It's like the maintainers are out on the tracks and the train's coming. It's like cheesy TV stuff. You need to have like legitimate, authentic stuff without all the fancy TV editing and the storyline.
Right. They try too hard. I mean, let's face it. Try and run the steam locomotive on a schedule constantly for months on end. There's going to be stuff that pops up. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe East Broad Top. They got some up and coming work going to be done. I'm sure there's going to be fun involved in that.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some good personalities too there that would make for good like TV personalities for sure.
I
focus on the locomotive personalities personally, because I'm sure that those engines could, if they could talk, they could tell stories that we would all be amazed at.
I mean, Bennett, I think you'll agree with me. Wouldn't you pay to see like David Brightville on national?
You read my mind, Nick.
On national television. Exactly. David Brightville, for those who aren't familiar, also one of the board members of the foundation, and a great guy, a wonderful character. Love him to bits. Last question for everyone is, once we get through COVID, and we're able, there's a vaccine, or we're able to power through this in some way as a preservation community, as the railroad industry in general. What are you most excited about when you look at 2021, 2022, the distant but not too distant future of rail preservation in general? And we'll start with you, Mike.
I'm just going to get the obvious out of the way. The East Broad Top's actually going to be pretty high up on my list. So just like I said earlier, just seeing the progress that's being made in such a short time now, and who knows in a year, 2 years, 5 years, and so on, what kind of things will be happening over there. And I just hope the overall scene in railroading changes for the better. I know for me and all my fellow coworkers at Amtrak, I just hope that things go back to some version of normal pre-COVID times, where everybody, the ridership has been climbing. Prior to COVID, the ridership was climbing. I think it was somewhere of an almost close to an all-time high in the company's history. The ridership just keeps growing, and hopefully we'll see, at least for us in the Northeast Corridor, to see a full schedule restoration, all the trains running, people going where they need to go, and then seeing somewhat of normality come back, and just going on with life as we know it, or will know a future version of, if that makes any sense.
Sparky?
I want my ridership back. I want my 2-train operation with 2 steam passenger trains passing each other at Groff's Grove. I want that 7 o'clock evening train back so bad, because that's
I
just
miss that.
the most romantic time of the day to be doing a train ride. And it's a whole other experience when the sun's going down, it's summer, and you have lightning bugs and crickets, and it's just the whole world that I'm missing so much due to COVID. I need that ridership back. I want that. I want 10-car trains. I want to make 90 work a little bit. Come on, let's be real here, guys. I want to get everybody out of the house and back. Just to see the mall area at Strasburg, and like little kids and their grandparents and their parents, and watching the locomotives pull in. Because right now, unfortunately, due to COVID, it's kind of a ghost town because of this social distancing. We can't have the people that we want, and they can't experience the stuff that we want to show them so desperately. It's kind of heartbreaking. I mean, COVID as a whole is heartbreaking, but when it's over, I really hope that we can go back to how we were, but even more. Get people out, show them everything that we have to offer, all of our railroads have to offer, and share. I wanna share what I love so much with everybody else, and I think that we as a group, the 4 of us here, could probably all agree with that. Like, we have passion, and we want to share that passion with everyone else. And we can if they're sitting at home due to this pandemic.
And Bennett?
I think there's a realization that we face a real challenge, that my generation, and it's probably the last generation that really saw mainline steam, and there's so many artifacts and so much to be collected to make sure it doesn't get tossed when we go, and that it's assimilated, or it's brought into the proper perspective and is preserved. And I think that's a big challenge, and there has to be an awareness that pretty soon most of us are not going to be here, that have really seen what was the golden age. And there should be oral histories, and there should be as much collected as possible to go into the scholarship of preservation. And I think that's a big challenge. And I think it's something we have to look forward to once we can get out and get back together again. It's hard to do things on Zoom. You know, you have to have face-to-face contact.
I think it enhances that connection when you're there. And I mean, it was nice for me in the beginning to go off topic for a little bit, just to connect with people I haven't seen or talked to in a while, because really early on in COVID, you didn't really have much of a choice. But now it's like that in-person contact, connection, what have you, it's sorely needed.
I would agree. I'm going to answer my own question too here and say that I'm really looking forward to continuing to see what we can do with events. I am a bit of a broken record when I say that I feel like the 21st century of rail preservation is going to be defined by those who are doing the coolest events. And sometimes it's about doing the big spectacle rail weekend, visiting Steam extravaganza. And sometimes it's about tapping into other fandoms and communities. I mean, all of you guys here have been involved in some way. I mean, Mike with Fort Wayne Railroad Historical Society, Joliet Rocket, man, that was a fantastic series of excursions that you guys ran in 2017, 2018, that we covered on the show, and ranks up there. Andrea, Steampunk Unlimited is still super, super high in my book. That is still a very high bar of an amazing event that worked because it was the wedding of rail fanning and steam with the steampunk fandom. And Bennett, what you've done over the years with your E8s, offering excursions for historical societies, for the veterans, things like that. I feel like the more that we could find ways of doing things that we couldn't before, because the technology like Zoom has allowed us to connect and meet different people that we wouldn't otherwise, and get to know different communities. I really look forward to what that's going to offer. So if you're having a cool event, you're listening to this, and your tourist railroad museum is having a cool event, let me know, and let me know that I should cover it, because I'm all about that.
Big marketing opportunity.
And a lot of fun to do those event episodes. I want to thank each of you, Mike, Sparky, and Bennett, for joining us here on the Roundhouse for our first group conversation for episode 100. I am so stoked that we actually hit 100 episodes of this show, and let's go for 100 more at least. It's been great to have each of you on the show individually and hear your stories. Been great to do this too, and can't wait to see what the future holds in store for all of us.
Thanks, Nick. This has been fun.
Appreciate the opportunity to come back, Nick. And by the way, your use unintentionally of the word stoked, and there's trains. I'm sorry, I had to throw that in again.
Oh, jeez.
But I appreciate the opportunity.
Add that with fire in the belly as far as all these T-shirt ideas were coming up.
I want 5% of all the T-shirt sales. Okay.
Well, yeah. Now we have to get into how the business breaks down and all that good stuff.
And now, the question of the day.
Last time on the Roundhouse, we were talking to John Bush, president of Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad out in the Wild West of New Mexico and Colorado. We were talking about historic narrow gauge railroading, and the question that I posed to you is, what do you love about the Cumbres and Toltec? What do you love about the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad? From the RoundhousePodcast.com, Jason Leach writes, "What I love about the railroad is that it has all of the original structures and equipment from the days of the Rio Grande. The natural beauty of the land it travels through makes it even better. This railroad is an excellent preserved piece of history that definitely earned the place it holds on the National Register of Historic Places." From Facebook, Nick Lucas writes, "There's something about Colorado narrow gauge that draws people in. A combination of big narrow gauge steam engines, the mountains and scenery, and the overall vibe you get from being there. It's a region where time somehow stands still. Things move a bit slower and at a more relaxed pace." Evan Jackson writes, "What do I love about the CNTS? That's honestly one of the toughest questions I've ever been asked. The short answer is, well, everything. For one thing, all the locomotives and rolling stock are original to the railroad. Not many other railroads, other than the East Broad Top, of course, have that distinction. The historic buildings and structures are kept in great condition, yet still look just the way they did in the steam days. I also love the spectacular scenery, from mountain passes to lush river valleys, high deserts to deep canyons. Not to mention, it's the highest and longest steam railroad in North America." Interesting observations. Makes me want to go there even more. Your question of the day for this episode is, what types of panel discussions would you like to hear on the Roundhouse? I really enjoyed recording today's episode and having that type of format. Since we've never done something quite like that before, I want to do other panels, so think about topics or groups of people that you think would be interesting to have, whether ones we've talked to before or new guests. Let me know on the RoundhousePodcast.com. Links to social media are there. And again, thank you for being part of this amazing journey so far. We're going to have some great adventures coming up, and it's because of you. Honestly, if there wasn't this level of engagement, interaction, and conversation that we get to have, I don't think that I would still be doing this. It's because of that this is so exciting. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do and look forward to where we get to go in the next 100 episodes. So again, appreciate you being on the journey, and remember, as always, that the Roundhouse is our house.